The number one question you're getting asked right now is, what class should I play for Diablo 4 Season 1? And I want to talk about it because there's a lot to look at. I've played every class up to tier 4. I've made build guides for various classes, and there are some that have performed significantly better in the preseason, like the first month before Season 1, than others. There are some that perform better at endgame. There are some that are much easier to gear and build out, and there are some that are just genuinely painful to play. So yeah, I want to cover it all today so you have the most information going into this. I will say, going into Season 1, there are complete changes. We're getting the malignant hearts that can be put into the caged hearts that can be put into your jewelry, and we're getting new uniques and new aspects. So the builds you see out right now and the things you see are going to change. So, you know, what we see performing best in preseason is going to be a little different in Season 1, but the underlying builds and the underlying, you know, fundamentals of the classes will be the same. So yeah, I want to make this to just try and give as much advice I can so you know what you're getting into when you pick certain classes. So I'm going to start with probably the saddest one to pick, and that's Sorcerer. Sorcerer is my favorite type of class. Sorcerer is my, you know, it's the thing I always go for. I always go for a magic wielding class in all games, MMOs in general, and I played a wizard in Diablo 3 as my main class. But it's sad to say, even though this is the first one I picked, it's the one I made the most build guides for, it's bad. It is a bad class. Fundamentally, Sorcerer is not built properly. It doesn't scale well at endgame. There are issues around how intelligence scales with resistances. There are good videos out there that fully talk about the resistances, but the way Sorcerer scales is really bad. And you see a lot of Sorcerer builds heavily reliant on the defensives, you know, Ice Shield, Teleport, Flame Shield, and Frost Nova, because it's so squishy and so weak in the end game. One of the main builds pulling out in the higher levels is Ice Shield Sorcerer, and not much else can pull those really high nightmare dungeons. So yeah, if you're going to play Sorcerer, just beware that in the preseason, this was one of the most painful to play. If you love the idea of, you know, kiting mobs, stepping back, freezing, jumping in and out, then that's still going to be a fun class. But there are others that do more damage faster and are easier and can scale better once they've got their gear. So yeah, for that reason, I would say Sorcerer is going to be a C. I'm probably not going to play Sorcerer in Season 1 as my first class unless there is a big patch buffing how that works. It's fun to level. You can run an electric build from 1 to 50, and it's probably one of the most fun to play. But then as soon as you hit tier 3 and 4, the cracks start showing, and the other classes just pull away from you really fast. There are so many fun builds I wanted to make with Sorcerer. I wanted to make a Crackling Energy build. I wanted to make a Hydra build, a Summoning build, and I made a few. I made like 5 builds for Sorcerer, and they're fun. There are fun builds that you can play in tier 3 and tier 4, but once you start pushing the high nightmare dungeons, everything falls off. Everything falls off, and the only thing that really survives is a really, really fast electric build or a really powerful vulnerability-based Ice Shard build. So yeah, that's Sorcerer. Next up, Druid. Druid is a funny one. Druid is one of the worst classes to level. It is painful. It is a very, very, very rough class to level. You are just going to be slapping mobs as a big dumb bear and not having much fun. Sorcerer, on the other hand, is 100 times better to level. But when you get to endgame, there are builds you can make with Druid that make it one of the best classes at endgame. The Pulverize, the Tornado, the Werewolf. There are so many super powerful builds on Druid that are incredibly fun to play. That's been my main build been my main class since moving on from Sorcerer to try Druid. I love it. I think it's amazing. I love the Werewolf playstyle. I love the Trample Slide, the Pulverize. There are so many fun builds on Druid. It can be fast, it can be slow, it can be tanky, it has a lot of natural resistances and armor, and it's just overall a really fun build. The only reason it's not going into S is because of one reason, the gear. If you take a basic class and give it a bunch of gear and you just pick things in the talent tree and go have fun, they'll all perform pretty well. If you do that on Druid, you're down here. If you don't know what you're doing on Druid and you just build a run-of-the-mill class, you're gonna do so bad. Druid needs specific uniques. Tempest Roar, if you don't have Tempest Roar, you've got a bad Druid for most of the builds. If you don't have the Crone Staff, you can't make that build. If you don't have the Werewolf Chest, you can't make that build. If you don't have, you know, Waxing Gibeus, you can't make that build. There are so many builds that are fun that rely on uniques, and their uniques are hard to get. I've made Druid builds and some are like 2 weeks old, and to this day I'm still getting comments saying, you know, I'm level 90 and I still don't have this unique. I can't make this build. It's so frustrating. So just be aware of that going in. You can make so many builds just with the aspects. With the aspects, it's probably here, but because it's so reliant on gear and it has a horrible leveling experience, it's probably an A an A class. Endgame, with the right gear, it's S. But overall, I'd say it's an A. Moving on, we have the undisputed king. This is the king. This is there's no two ways around it. Rogue is super fast, super strong. Most of the pro players, most of like the people, so a lot of people got pre-release access. So they got like a couple of weeks of access to the game before the game came out. Some of the big creators, not me. I was with you guys on day one. But yeah, a lot of the creators got pre-release access. And you'll notice a lot of these big creators went rogue. There's a reason for that, because it was so much stronger. They've done a few balancing changes in patches post-release, but rogue still pulls out. Rogue is still so strong. Pretty much any build you make on rogue is fast and powerful. And that's it. What more do you want? You grab a bit of gear, you grab a few uniques, and you're fast and powerful. You don't need the same reliance on gear as Druid. You aren't reliant on, just one build like Sorcerer. It is just strong. I've got a website and I'll link that down below. And we made a lot of rogue builds and they all work. Poison builds, frost builds, twisting blade type builds, penetrating shot, archery builds. There are a lot of builds you can make on rogue, and all of them do well. All of them are good at endgame. All of them are good in nightmare dungeons because of rogue's natural speed and its ability to move around and teleport. Not teleport, but its ability to move around and like get around the map fast. It's good for farming. It's good for clearing. It's fast at leveling. It's faster. You need a certain unique. You can plow through dungeons super fast. And most of the good builds scale well together. It's well balanced at endgame. It's just good. Playing as an endgame sorcerer or a leveling druid and playing with a rogue, you will feel so weak because they will dart ahead of you. They will 2 and 3 shot bosses. They'll clear huge packs on their own. They're so strong, and I think it's an S tier pick. If anything needs a little nerf, I think it's rogue. But I would rather see the other things buffed up than rogue brought down, because rogue's just fun to play. It's fun to play. And what you'll see is a lot of people that went rogue in the preseason are going rogue in season 1 because they know it's that good. Necromancer. Oh, Necromancer. I had so much enjoyment of Necromancer on the beta. I enjoyed, the minions. I love minion classes. I play minion classes in PoE. I think it's a great fun play style, and it's different to everything else. And I was very excited, with the minions, the skeletal mages and stuff, the golems, and being able to tweak those to different builds. I was super excited to just jump on Necromancer and just make some crazy minion swarm builds. And that just wasn't the case. Minions have not been implemented well in Diablo 4. They don't scale well. They're not as robust and not as fast as other builds, and they're just not as good. They're not as good, and that's the reason why bone builds, blood builds, corpse builds are just doing a lot better. At least they were, at the start. There've been a few patches since, but they still don't hold up as well. And I think without minions, Necromancer just feels incomplete. It's like having Druid but not being able to transform, because the transformations are a huge part of the build. You want to try it and you want to do it, and there's a lot of stuff in those transformations that are fun to play. And that's with Necro, that the minions should empower the build, and then you should work around those. I want mages, and then I'm going to do this with mages. I want golems, and then I'm going to have this big tanky build. But it just doesn't work. It just isn't that good. That the minion builds just aren't that good. I've seen some people make some really good minion builds, and some people are doing good with it. But overall, it just doesn't feel as powerful. And because of that, I don't think it's as fun to play. If you like playing a Necromancer build where you do corpse explosion, bone spear, all that sort of stuff, great. But for me, it just feels like a sorcerer without half its build. It doesn't feel as good to me. And I think without the minions, I'm not going to pick it in season 1. I'd love to go all in on Necromancer. I really hope, like, just before season 1 drops, they do a big patch and it buffs minions. And, you can run with a huge army. But right now, one of the easiest things you can do on Necromancer is go onto your minions and just take the talents that empower you. So there's certain talents in there that say sacrifice having minions and get this buff, sacrifice having mages and get this buff, sacrifice having golems and get this buff. And those buffs outweigh having the minions themselves. So yeah, Necromancer for me, is it as powerful as, say, a Druid? Certain builds maybe, but it doesn't feel as fun without the minions. It really doesn't for me, but that's personal choice. If you hate minions and you still like the idea of Necromancer, it might be an A for you, but that's where it sits for me as a B. Finally, Barbarian. Barbarian is a solid choice. Barbarian is fun. Barbarian is good. I think they've done a very good job with Barbarian. I think their system, having different weapons, being able to hold different weapons is great. an element of boredom, I feel, with Barbarian at the minute, in that you're so reliant on your shouts that you have to cycle your shouts all the time. And that takes away from how good your builds can be. You can't pack that much different variation into a build if you're constantly, working around these shouts that are almost mandatory in some builds. So I do think that's a little boring. And given that, you're always just swinging a weapon, that can be a little boring. But this is a character class that runs into combat head on and attacks stuff, and it does it well. If you like that, it does it well. It's strong. It scales well with its armor. It has great damage. It has great thorn damage. It has great defensives. Overall, the builds are just fun as well. Whirlwind, Hotter. There's some really good builds out there. I haven't played Barbarian as much of the others because I'm more of a magic guy normally. But going into season 1, I am tempted to try pushing Barbarian quite hard because it's fun. It is just fun. Leaping around and swinging the sword and just going crazy on Barbarian and just smashing everything to pieces just feels fun, and it holds out. It's strong. They're good in PvP. They're just good. They're just solid, good choices. I think they're one of the most balanced in terms of they don't feel overpowered. If any build that works, any of these builds that work feels overpowered, right? You can delete things 20 levels higher than you. Anything here is capable of that. But there's always a level of clunkiness on Barbarian that you can work through and make it stronger. And I think it's one of the most balanced in terms of defense, strength, speed. It just feels complete. It feels good. I think they've basically just evolved on what they had in Diablo 3 and made it much better, and they've done a great job. Shame they didn't do that with Sorcerer. But yeah, overall, I think that's a solid A choice. If I'd not played anything to season 4 in preseason, if I was coming at this completely new, I would probably suggest going for Rogue. I'd say Rogue is amazing. If you like that playstyle, you're going to have a ton of fun. Who knows what they're going to do in the first season with builds, but Rogue is phenomenal. Failing that, if you prefer the Druid playstyle, that's fun. Barbarian playstyle, that's fun. The ones I would watch out for is Necromancer, because its minions just aren't there, and Sorcerer, because it's just bad. I'm sorry, I love Sorcerer. I love playing Sorcerer. I think it's the best, most fun class in all of Diablo, all the Diablo games, but it's just bad in Diablo 4. That's all there is to it. Yeah, that's my tier list. I'm still on the fence. I mean, I'll probably play them all. I'll be doing build guides for all of them. I'll be talking about them all. I'm probably going to try them all. I don't know what I'm going to go with first. I don't think it's going to be Sorcerer unless they get a massive revamp, and I don't think it's going to be Necro unless they get a minion revamp. But I'm on the fence between Barbarian and Rogue, I think, or Druid. Druid is my favorite right now, but I've played a ton of it. Maybe I'm going to try Barbarian or Rogue, then Druid, then see what state these two are in. But yeah, that's the tier list. I'd love to hear what you think. There is ways to move. If we're talking about pure strength, maybe I'd rejig this and go Rogue, Druid, Necro, Barbarian, Sorcerer. Just pure strength, I'd maybe jig it like this. In terms of like pure fun, I'd probably say Druid and Rogue are at the top. Maybe with Barbarian as well. Necromancer on an A, Sorcerer on a B in terms of pure fun. But overall, this is how I see it. Love to hear what you think. What are your thoughts? Let me know what your tier list is. Just throw them in. 5 classes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. S, A, B, C, D. Just let me know. What do you think? Or what are you going to play in season 1? I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, if you like builds and guides and want to get that as soon as it's out, subscribe for more. Like the video, all that fun stuff. But that's it. Take care. See you in the next one. Bye bye.